The bids are in, the gavel's dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is our podcast dedicated to all things wine value, wine retail, and I guess just wine.
Just wine.
Just wine. My name is Jeff McGurn. I work on our marketing team here at WineBid. With me, as always, is the illustrious wine auction and wine expert, Paul Walker. Thank you for joining me, Paul. This,
what's up?
Of course, is going to be our look at what's coming to auction. We're going to try and move quickly this week or try something a little bit different and go around the world in 30 or so minutes. But the challenge here is going to be there is a ton of wine coming into auction. So there's a lot of stuff to cover. We have 4,000 lots with what, like 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 bottles, some ridiculous amount of bottles.
Yeah, it keeps growing. There's more and more stuff keeps getting added this week. It's like, it's crazy.
It's growing like a weed. So let's jump right into it. I'm just going to get this out of the way. There's a ton of first growth. There's a ton of first growth coming to auction. 82 Moutons for $13.95. A 5 liter of 90 Mouton for $39.95. 6 liter of 03 Lafite for $62.90. I feel like a used car salesman.
You sound like one.
Right? You know, I'm just like Cal Worthington going through at the Wine Country Mall in Napa. We've got the number 37 Wine Spectator of 2001 wine, a cost at
that's an obscure reference, number 37 of 2000.
No, I wanted to point this out because I want to get your thoughts on this. So cost was the number 37.
Yeah, you know, the cost that's in this week is not cheap.
It's not cheap.
I kind of was shocked. I was like, oh, cool. There's a bunch of costs too. Like there's a bunch of everything. But then I looked at Cost Cisternel and I was like, wow, it's not inexpensive stuff. Like it's kind of high end or go home to this week.
It's that finally hammered effect. Where this
well, okay.
Podcast,
I guess I should say, like you mentioned, the number 37, that wine, the 01, is relatively reasonable. And it's
but hold on a second, because this is what I'm saying. If you're at number 37, you're 150. You go up 9 positions to number 28 in 2005, and it's 275. So 9 Wine Spectator places equals $125.
I think it's Parker. It's all Parker, because when he gives, or back in the day, let's say this is 20 odd years ago, when he gives a wine at the level of Cost Cisternel 93 points, it gets dogged historically. That's what happens in the secondary market. It doesn't perform very well, even if the wine's probably great. And that's the thing, right? This review is probably from 2004, 2007. I mean, maybe he re-rated it down the road. I could look it up, but that's the problem. It gets kind of, tarnished early on, whereas 05 obviously was a superior vintage and it got a much, much higher score. So it catapults it back into that, 250 plus range. And then you find the 09, which is new this week. 355. It's more than, it's almost $100 more than the 05. I think for the money, I mean, 09 is a smoking vintage, but that's a lot more than the 05. I'd say, okay, get the 05. You could also drink it probably sooner, and it's quite a bit less. Or buy the 01 for $150.
For $150, right? I mean, the calculation I came down to was every placement in Wine Spectator is worth $13.80. That's what I came out to.
That's an interesting interesting theory. Like it's not sure that's correct.
It's an apples out. 37 is $150, 28's $275, $13.89.
All right. So just for today's sake, because it's crazy, let's move on. Do you mind if I run through just 10 Bordeaux? Because that's all I have on the list.
Quick. And then
I've got 3 liter Cheval Blanc. That's rare. 2000 Cheval Blanc 3 liter. Not going to see too many of those. There's one of those.
For you, I got a whole closet full of 3 liter Cheval Blancs.
Well, there you go. 3,600 a piece up this week. 09 Croix de la Brie. Don't see that all the time. There's 5 of those for 95. 02 Haut-Brion Blanc. We always love to talk about expensive Bordeaux, white Bordeaux. There's an 02 Haut-Brion Blanc for 650, which is far and away a lot more than the 02 red. And probably 01 red and probably 03 red and probably a lot of 2000 reds. But, always cool to see. 02 Haut-Brion Blanc. I love this wine. It's rare. It's fantastic. It's very expensive. And that's why I love it. 81 Riesec, Jeff. I picked this one out for you. $90. Not too expensive.
Can you not mention the stuff that I'm bidding on, please? Thank you.
Anyway, I thought that was cool, right? To get something from, a vintage like that. not over $100. The O1 is insanely expensive. I think finding an 81, I think there might be a 90 in there as well, which is just over $100. Anyway, I picked that one out for you. Let's see, 90 Rock to Calm. You don't see those too often. Great vintage, not terribly expensive. It was at 56, I think, yesterday. So it's got a bid. 2010 Saint Pierre. There's a case of that. This is pretty interesting stuff, not often found. And I think there's a bottle of 03 that's kind of expensive, but the case of 2010 is in for $11.40. It wasn't too bad. 05 Clos Saint Martin. It's a rare Saint-Emilion wine. Don't see that too often. There's one of those in for 105. 09, speaking of Haut-Brion, there's Allery Haut-Brion, which has an interesting backstory. I don't need to get into it, but basically it's a vineyard in the middle of Haut-Brion's vineyard. And it used to go into, I think, the second label, Bahan Haut-Brion, or what was called originally, I think, La Passion de Haut-Brion. But then there was some legal dispute, and it's a separate entity now. But anyway, that's in for 145 for the 09. There's other vintages too, and I think case lots. And that is my list of Bordeaux picks, actually.
The only three I'll mention, there was an 05 Smith Oliphant Blanc for 100, which was number 19. I thought that was really interesting. There was an 01 Riosac for 130, and then a ton of great 01 Sauterne.
130, it must be 01 Riosac for 130. Is that half bottle or a full bottle?
No, that was a 750.
Oh, really?
I actually thought that was a decent deal for the 01 Riosac, because that, as you may be unaware, was a great vintage for Sauterne. The other thing that I thought was really cool was there was a 3 liter of 05 Malascot Saint-Exupéry for $520. And I love this producer. I feel like it's a phenomenal deal. And for a 3 liter from 05, which is a great vintage from Bordeaux, I think that could be really cool. $520 doesn't seem crazy for me. Let's move on to Burgundy, because I know somebody here is a bit of a Berg hound. 03 Domaine Ponceau Griot Chambertin, 1.5 liter. So we've got a mag in OWC for $600. Is that a good deal?
03, man. It's got the stigma of the 03 vintage. So those wines are always going to be a little bit less, just because of the heat, the controversy, whatever it is. It's, I think in the secondary market, especially, they're far less than say 02s or 05 reds anyway. But I would also maybe stay away from 03 whites. I haven't had too much luck with a lot of 03 white Bergs, but 03 reds are, it's like I think you really need to know the wine if you want to go after it. I mean, Ponceau, was it Griot? Did you say Griot Chambertin?
Yeah, Griot.
Yeah, and serious stuff. But again, it's going to be riper and more, forward. And
what about like an 07 Domaine Ramonet Batard Montrachet 6 liter?
Ramonet, serious Ramonet large format this week.
6 liter for $59.20. I mean,
I would actually go for the Montrachet 6 liter for $19,120.
Well, did you see? They had a Ramonet Chassagne Montrachet La Boudrotte. Boudriot 3 liter, which I thought was really cool. I feel like there was just a ton of large format. I've been on all large format Bergs. We don't see like a ton of large format Bergs, but there's like a flood of them coming in this week. 2012 Armand Joffre, which I really love the name on this one. Geoffrey Chambertin Lavaux.
Geoffroy. I should start calling you Geoffroy.
It makes me sound more sophisticated.
And you need
this one's a mag for 140, and this seemed like a really good price to me as well.
Yeah, I don't know the producer that well. There was so much serious stuff in this week that I kind of skipped over a lot of things. There were some deals. We talked about this before. I have to point this out before I forget. The 2012 Jean Chauvenet Nuit Saint-Georges Appellation Magnums are $65. I believe the 750s are in for $35. So there's 5 mags. Rare that you see anything at this price. I read the Berghound reviews. They were pretty positive that he actually had a heart next to his note, which I think means that like it's especially noted that he really enjoyed it. So yeah, all kinds of great stuff. And I can sweep through these too quickly if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
We're pressed for time as we always are, but especially today, especially with so much crazy stuff in 95 Bouchard Montrachet Magnum. There's one of those at $850. A couple of bottles of Lafon, the Clos de la Barre. There's 2 of those at $195. There's some A lot of Amiot Cervelle. There's Amoureuses, four of those at 2000, or excuse me, four at $215 for the 13. Don't see too much Amoureuses for under $300, so that's pretty interesting. Not as obviously a well-regarded producer as others in that neighborhood, but still, it's always cool to see stuff like that. There's a bunch of Arlo, also large formats, Maurice Saint-Denis Le Rochot, 3 liters, $300. There's an 83 Clos Lambres Magnum for $430. I have not seen very many of these, especially from the 80s, especially in large format. 2020 Dujac Pouligny Montrachet Le Folatier. I saw that for $215. There's some Fourier, love Fourier. We always talk about it. This is Griot Chambertin 2018 for $750. And then there's some of the Premier Cru and Appellation wines in as well. There's a beautiful mini vertical of Roumier Bonmar, which is wild, 17 through 20. I just flagged the 2019, which is at 2,200. The other vintages are a little bit less. But anyway, some beautiful wines there from Roumier. There's some, I mentioned the Chauvenet, inexpensive mags of 2012 Nuit Saint-Georges. There's some Michel Nillon, Chevalier Montrachet. There's multiple other vintages and others. Yeah, especially Chevalier. I flagged the 2010. There's half case of that. It's at $330 a piece. There's a bunch of Chablis. I think I picked out just a couple, but Pinson, Domaine Pinson, Les Clos Mag at 19 at 110. There's other mags as well. We talked about the Ramonet large formats. There's all kinds of those, which is really wild. There was three bottles of 18 Rouleau Meursault at 230, which is on the, I would say that, if you can get Rouleau Meursault for under 300, unfortunately, that's what we're calling a value these days. Let's see, 16 Trappé Gevrey Chambertin Austria Magnum at 150. That was pretty interesting. Don't see too many of those, especially large format. Some Dominique Laurent wines, including the Série Rare, if you want to say it that way, whatever way you prefer. Von Romanet Cuvée Royale 99 at 60, which I thought was, an interesting wine from a fantastic red vintage. Let's see, Sauzet Pouligny Montrachet Les Combettes, half case of the 01 at 125 each. There's others as well. 05 Jeanté Pancio Les Fusselat, two of those at 100. Let's see, Guylaine Barteau, Chambolle Musigny Les Charmes. All kinds of interesting wines from Guylaine Barteau. It's a great, great producer. All price ranges, not cheap, but there's, I think, some of the Bourgogne Bon as well. Gilbert Pic Chablis Old Vines 2015, one of those mags at 40, which I thought was a great deal. 15 is the right vintage, but that should be really tasty. 18 Hubert Lignier Gevrey Chambertin Souvray, two of those at 120. Finally, let's see, just a couple more. 13 Meunier Musigny, one of those in at 1950 this week. There's a 95 Jean Griveaux Nuit Saint-Georges Les Boudot for 140. I didn't think that was terribly expensive for Jean Griveaux. Some excellent wines. Bunch of Joseph Johann wines, including the Bonne Claude et Mouche Magnum from 05 at 260, which I didn't think was terrible. There's also some, I think, Grand Deschuzot and some other wines as well. 2010 Le Chablisienne, Montemilieu, 4 mags of that at 75. I thought that was a great deal. Machard de Gramont Von Romanet Les Godichaux, two of those at 190 from 1995, 190 a piece. Very interesting stuff. Not terribly expensive for a fantastic vintage. And let's see, a couple more whites. Paul Pernot, 14, Pouligny Montrachet Champcanet, Clos Jacquelot at 70. Pierre Girardin, Pouligny Montrachet Les Pucelles. Pierre Girardin's some fantastic stuff. Magnums of the 18 Pouligny Montrachet Pucelles in wood, 360 a piece. And that wraps it up for my Berg picks this week.
Let's travel around France just a little bit. Let's go to Alsace.
Oh yeah, Alsace. There's some awesome Trimbach this week. Did you see that?
So,
there's a whole bunch of it.
There's a ton of Trimbach this week. I'm going to start with Zin Umbrecht because it was this awesome 2000 Gewürztraminer.
Oh yeah, there's more, a little more trickled in this week, huh?
A little more trickled in, $75 for this Tan Clos Saint Urbain VT. Trimbach 2011 Gewürztraminer Cuvée des Seigneurs Ribier Pierre. And then a Gewürztraminer Ors Show SGN. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, Orchois. Yeah.
Orchois.
Orchois. And Selection Grand Noble. So these are like the sort of reserve label, if you will.
Yeah, these are the high end. I mean, look, mainline Trimbach is fantastic. This stuff is just outstanding. And $45, $170 for the 2000 Ors Show. This stuff is just unbelievable. I'm a huge fan of Trimbach. I love their stuff. I mean, I love a lot of it.
Did you see, I flagged the Clos Saint-Hune Vendange Tardif because you rarely see the late harvest Clos Saint-Hune. You do find the Clos Saint-Hune fairly often, the drier version, but there's, an 89 Clos Saint-Hune Vendange Tardif at 425. Different style, obviously, than the dry version, but seriously cool, rare stuff. And again, like all these really neat late harvest and SGN wines from Trimbach this week. So very cool.
And stuff from the 90s too. So
80s, 90s. Yeah.
You're getting a lot of really interesting stuff like that. I mean, they've got some Vendange Tardif 98 Gewürztraminer for $105. Right. For 3-bottle lot, by the way. So you get 3 bottles from the 90s. And a lot of that stuff really, I mean, I've had a lot of even some of the older Pinot Gris and stuff, and that stuff just has the acidity to go a long way, even with dry wine. Like that stuff really ages very well from my perspective. So just a ton of really cool Beaujolais. Let's go to Beaujolais. Domaine de la Grande Cour, Brûlé Cuvée. This one, 2017, $70 for a mag. Just a really cool bottle and a bunch of stuff coming in from Domaine de la Grande Cour. There was Louis Chave, Desvigne, Morgon, Climat, Côte de Puy.
Des Vignes,
2018, $20. Again, cool bottle, great price. Anything else from Beaujolais that you thought was particularly interesting?
Yeah, no, you mentioned the Dutrève wines. I had to call out one of those as well because I remember tasting this wine not too long ago. The Liodiche, it's Champagne Cuvée Vieilles Vignes, which is kind of funny. But there's a mag of 15 and I believe other vintages of the same cuvee as well. But the mag at 15 for 100 I thought was a great deal because that's really, really, really good wine. And there's also mags of the Fleury Cuvée Vigne Les Clos and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so a bunch of other Beaujolais. I didn't even have time to look at all the other things. There's a Julien Saunier Fleury Magnum, 5 of those for 85 a piece. I thought that was very interesting. And again, just an embarrassment of riches here.
So much good stuff in Beaujolais. Let's go to Champagne for just a little bit. 83 Dom Perignon, which I thought was cool. Just a ton of Dom coming in auction. This one I think is neat for anybody, it's turning 40 this year. Could be a really cool bottle. Yeah. And then my favorite mimosa wine, the 08 Jacques Salas, Extra Group Premier. Grand Cru, Extra Premier Cru, Milsame. This one for $3,000 just really complements the Tropicana orange juice that I use.
Oh boy, you're going to get in trouble with the Champagne House. You're going to come out.
I am going to get in trouble with There's Bilcart Salmon, Cuvée Elizabeth, Salmon Brut, 08 for $175. I'm curious, have you had that? And I'm wondering, how is it?
08? I don't think so.
Cuvée Elizabeth.
I don't think so. I've had earlier vintages, but that's back when I got to taste this stuff a lot. But no, I haven't had the. I'll bet that's killer. I'll bet it's really, really good.
I'll bet that's outstanding. 2014 Pierre Guimonet Special Club Grand Terroir.
More Guimonet Special Club. There was some of this in, I think, last week or the week before. But I noticed
for like $80.
New batch. Yeah, that's cool because there was 08 in, and then this week there's. Or no,
14. Well, this is 14.
Maybe it was a different vintage last time. I can't remember. But anyway, that's great stuff.
Your favorite producer, Armand de Brignac Brut, is in for $270. I know you love that stuff. One that I think is really cool, which you don't see a ton of, but I actually really like this. You probably hate it. 1989 Pommery Brut Louise, the Cuvée Louise.
Oh, yeah. No, Cuvée Louise.
Which I really like the Cuvée Louise. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, no, that stuff is great.
185 is not bad, especially with, for 89. And they're tasting those from 2019 that actually say it's still really good, but got a nice acidic backbone, which I think can let it go the distance. So I really like that Cuvée Louise. Any other champagne that you're particularly interested in right now?
Yeah, I was really surprised that you didn't mention the Fleur de Miraval, the estate of your friends Brad Pitt and I believe his ex-wife.
Yeah.
So
Brad and Angie.
I was surprised that you didn't talk about, all the gift bottles that you've gotten. It's got this cute little bow on it with a brass.
Here's the thing, Miraval, it's not a commercial producer. It's all about small production and just making very limited quantities.
Hey, the rosé, you can find the rosé reliably at a lot of
anywhere,
places, and it's really good. It's tasty.
It's actually quite good.
It's great. Anyway, the champagne was in this week, which I thought was funny. Fleur de Miraval. Obviously, it's from Champagne. It's not sparkling wine from the Provence estate, but I believe it is the same ownership. Anyway, I thought that was funny and I flagged it. Also, let's see, there's a bottle of Cru Clos d'Ambonay, which you do not see very often. Their most exclusive wine, I would say, from the Clos d'Ambonay vineyard of 2000 in for 2200. Yeah, there were some 69 Dom Perignon Rosé in magnums, a couple of those, which I thought was really wild. Don't see those too often.
Yeah, that was neat.
Yeah, that was crazy. And then Pertois Morisset Rosé Côte de Blanc, I picked those because it was a producer I'd never heard of, and they weren't expensive, and they have bids, so somebody's interested in them. But anyway, 6 of those they were at 36, and that was my selection of champagne this week.
Let's just take a quick jaunt over to Corsica for a 2013 Union de Vignerons Saint-Pourçain de Illier de Bouteille Alaria.
You're just yard sailing this pronunciation.
That is the Corsican pronunciation. If you have been to Corsica and spent any time there, then you would know that's how they say it in Corsica.
Let's see.
2013. This one I thought was really interesting, just a Corsican Syrah. A part of me is interested in bidding on it just because I'd be interested in tasting what a Syrah from Corsica tastes like.
Yeah, there's, it's funny because there is and of course I'm forgetting right now, but there's quite a sort of a cult producer of natural wine in Corsica that you can find at high-end wine bars and stuff. And I'm spacing on what it is, but my guess is that this wine, with its label that says 100% Syrah on the front, which might be for the domestic market, is probably not that style. I'm imagining it's probably a little bit more forward and fruit-driven. I could be completely wrong. I could just be making stupid assumptions, which I do all the time. But yeah, that's quite a title too. It's like cooperative or something. Did you look up the winery or anything?
I tried. I really tried.
Because it sounds like a cooperative, like Union de Vignerons 100% de l'Île de Beauté Alaria.
Yeah,
XX270.
Yeah, it does. And I wasn't able to find a ton of information, but let's continue on. We've got a little bit of time. The last place I want to go is to Jura. We've got some Pouffany coming into auction and some Jean-François Gonavat. So we've got some 11 Pouffany.
Gonavat gets mentioned every single week, I think. Every week, oh, it's super rare. And every week we have.
And it's it comes in again. And at some point we're going to lose credibility if we had any to begin with. But I just thought it was cool to see some Vin Jaune in market.
The Vin Jaune is cool. I know that there was Vin Jaune from Gonavat, but it hasn't been in for a while. But there's a bunch of different producers, including Pouffany, which I think is more, it gets more attention than some of the other guys that are in this week. Like Domaine de Montbourgeot, I'd never heard of, and that's got bids at 76. There's the Pouffany's at 135. There's different vintages, but yeah, very cool to see Vin Jaune. Les Matinées Côte de Jura Vin Jaune 09 for 81. And it looks like most of these do have bids. And then Michel Gachier Vin Jaune also. So that's very special stuff and, made in a very specific style and fun to see, numerous examples from different producers in the same week. So those will not last.
So do we have time to fly over the pond or do we have to wrap it up here, Paul?
I unfortunately have to wrap it. I was going to say there's also some Clodonel Cabernet Franc 2018. I always like to mention it's not expensive. And this was a property created by Anne-Claude Leflevre. I believe she founded it, owned the vineyard, family owns the vineyards. Anyway, bottle of the 18 for 35. And then there's some Clos Rougeard 15 snuck in this week again for 190. Sorry.
God.
Some Pépier Muscadet Magnums.
Please stop.
Pépier Muscadet Magnums for, let's see, 75 for the 2014. Great undersung Muscadet in Magnum format, which is awesome. Perfect party bottle. There was a whole bunch of Thai Olu, Montlouis in this week, all kinds of different designations and formats, and it's not expensive and it's great wine. Looks like a lot of it's getting bids too. Domaine de Clozel, Savennières, Clos de Papillon. I saw 5 of those for 45. That's great stuff from Savennières. Domaine de Collier, Saumur Blanc, 4 of those for 45. Looks exciting. There were some others as well from Collier. And then let's see, Gerard Boulay Sancerre La Côte, Mag at 80, which I thought was great for the 2015. And then 2014, Francois Chiden, Mont-Louis-sur-Loire, Clos de Breuil, Magnum, 6 of those at 65, and many others as well. Oh, and then there's a whole bunch of Olga Raffo, Chinon Rosé. I flagged that at 31 because I hadn't seen too much of the Raffo, Chinon Rosé, and Magnum, so that was cool. Anyway, I skipped right over, into the Loire there and without really saying anything, but. Yeah, no, I think, did you have others at all? I mean, there's just so much crazy stuff this week. And we should maybe just mention that there is, part of this large collection that's in auction, has multiple other producers from Piedmont, from Tuscany.
I was just going to say there's a
Spain,
ton of Italian wine.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of Chapoutier in this week, Magnums of all sorts of the Hermitage Blanc. There's Marcel Juge Cornas. There's Sorel Hermitage Blanc.
Cinnacanon, Scarecrow, bunch of Bridge. Ton of
on the domestic front, was there anything really wild that caught your eye? There's a whole bunch of Dalla which was really cool, including 3 bottles of the 13. Well, there's also 3 bottles of the 13 MDV, which is the sort of rarest of the rare. It's like the tiny part of Maya Vineyard that's the highest quality, supposedly.
We have a $99 volley coming in for
there's Colleen, there's the Maya, there's the Appellation Cabernet, if you will. There's some GB Crane Cabernet in this week. There's some Keplinger, there's Kongsgaard, there's Kutch Chardonnay, there's Lillian, Rosé, which we never see, Liquid Farm, Martinelli Jackass Hill, there's Morlaix 3 liters, there's Mount Eden Magnum Cabernet, Peter Michael Party's Cabernet, just like a
bunch of Vegas Sicilia, a bunch of JJ Prum coming into auction, Willie Schaefer, Auslaces, Molly Duker. There's a bunch of GD Vajra. There was an 85 Quintarale Bianco dessert wine that was really cool. That they rarely make, I guess. There's just Gaia's and Giacomo Conternos.
Bunch of La Spinetta, Barbaresco, and Barolo, which we haven't seen in a long time. Yeah, it's Paolo Scavino. There's Old Vietti, 82 Vietti, Barolo Reserva. There's Pinta Noval Nacional, 97, $850 for that. Oh, Chateau Simone Rosé. There's a bunch of that. And there's the white from Simone, which is very collectible. All kinds of cool stuff. But hey, take a look. We have to run, unfortunately. Oh, Paolo Bea, Multifalco Rosa Reserva. I wanted to say that too.
It's just like this episode is just us shouting out bottles.
We're just yelling out names of wines and pick a producer in your favorite region and you'll find something. Right. In large format too.
In large format too. Tons of large format. By the way, the other thing I'll mention, there's a lot of stuff at really accessible prices. I can't tell you how much Burgundy and great Italian wine and great, even a US wine that I was seeing at 25, 30, 40, 50 bucks.
Right.
Really good stuff. Even in Burgundy, there's a lot of really good Burgundy at under some $100. So anyway, and with that, it's Jeff McGirt and Paul Walker signing off, wishing you happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers. Have a good time.